but I did have to take somebody to collections. One customer, like I feel like in a year and a half, almost 2 years, one customer is good. Like it's a good ratio. But I had to take sometimes you get an ugly client where you have to go that way. It's not fun.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Bluntly Bears podcast. We're doing things a little differently today. I am joined by my co-host. You're not gonna say anything. You're just gonna sit
Hi.
there? It's weird that I can't hear you.
You can't. That's why I said we should do no headphones.
No, this is fine. This is fine. I'm sure the microphone is still working. No, welcome back, guys. Today we are joined by my new co-host, Roman Fedorenko. You might know him from another episode.
Yeah, first and last time I'm hosting.
If you don't know him, go find that episode. But our guest of honor today is Yuriy. Yuriy, how are you today, man?
I'm good, man. It's great to be here. I've been a long fan of the podcast and finally got a feature here, so I'm
Long
excited.
time listener, first time caller, right?
Exactly.
Well, it's good to have you, man, all the way here from Salem, Oregon, man. You made a drive for this, so I appreciate that. Obviously we kind of know each other from a little band that we're in. When we're still in, none of us have left or quit. But to get
David,
started,
can you fact check that statement?
that over there.
I'm pretty sure Yuriy just quit last gig.
Yeah. But yeah, man, to get started, man, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of who you are and what you do for work and just in general.
Yeah. So obviously I love music. Been playing music with you guys for the SAR Musica. But that's my night gig. During the day, I'm an electrician. I've been doing electrical work for about 15 years now, going on 16.
Okay.
So, and that's how I bring the bread home. So.
Yeah, electrical work for a while now. How did you get started in that?
I feel like I naturally fell into it because it's like Russians are almost expected to be in the construction trade. You either are in the construction trade or you've been in construction trade if you're Russian, So I feel like Russians are like, you're expected to be an electrician nowadays if you're doing construction. It's like if you meet an Indian guy, you're like, what do you do? Oh, I probably, in the supermarket business, or I own a restaurant.
Or IT, maybe.
And you're canceled.
You have some editing to do on this one. But no, I just feel like
or doctors. Indians are doctors too. You can give them some credit, man. They either are a supermarket or they're doctors. So that's to your credit. I'm trying to help you out here.
I appreciate it. But also Asians, they're taking over the doctor thing. So,
that's true.
So.
Or I guess I confuse it too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's technically they're Asian too.
That's true. Well, technically we're Asian as well, kind of.
We're
right?
all Asian.
Russians.
Long story short, I just feel like I know a lot of Russian electricians, and my uncle is an electrician. I know my brother's an electrician, and it's just kind of what you're, if you're Slavic, you're in construction. If you're in construction, you're probably an electrician. So it kind of was a natural path to follow. My uncle called me one time and he's like, "Hey, we're hiring. Do you want to, come be a Sparky?" And I was like,
Sparky?
Yeah, Sparky is kind of the trade slang for electricians. So. I was like, yeah, I'll give this thing a try, and been doing it ever since. So,
now, would you say construction workers and electricians are kind of like a little bit like better than construction workers in terms of the trade? Like, would you put yourself above
the hierarchy?
Yeah, the hierarchy of
there's a triangle. Yeah,
blue collar,
definitely top.
Where does it fall in the hierarchy?
Oh, top. Yeah, for sure, top. Yeah.
In the blue collar industry, there's no nothing.
I heard linemen are better than electricians.
So either linemen or elevator guys. Elevator guys are required to have all their certifications. They have to have their mechanical, they have to have their electrical, they have to know all of it. So elevator guys are even bigger jerks than electricians are.
Oh, really?
But that's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, linemen are also, linemen don't like electricians, just naturally. Because a lot of electricians try to get into the lineman trade and they're like, If you want to be a lineman, you'd be a lineman.
Can you
what's
explain the
lineman?
difference? Yeah.
The linemen are the people that work on the power lines. So if you're driving down the road, you see the power lines. So that's linemen. They work out of bucket trucks. They pull the big wires with high voltage.
Okay.
Where we work, we're called inside electricians. So once you get inside the building, that's where our scope of work kind of begins. So
you guys have to work together a lot.
yeah, we have to work together usually in the beginning of the project because they tell us, okay, we want our lines coming into, this electrical room here, and then they come and do their stuff, but we don't work hand to hand very much. But
The linemen are like basically work for the city though, right?
No, it's so we have PGE in Oregon. We have PGE, and they have a region. Then Pacific Power has their region, and then Salem Electric has their region. So, but it's a private company that does it.
Really?
Yeah.
So all the lines in the city are all like they have their own regions. Nothing is actually by the city. You would think that you know how like sewage systems or whatever. I don't know, but like I'm talking out of my butt here. But like you would think that
smart.
the roads we drive on, that's the city, right?
Yeah,
Mostly.
Mostly, yeah.
Federal,
I guess.
state. But so does do they have like different zip codes where PGE is versus where Pacific Power is?
Yeah, so they can't have a monopoly, so they give like different regions. PGE is the biggest one, so they have the most of the land. But then they're like, well, we can't just let PGE have all of the bread. So here's Pacific Power, and they kind of let them have their, area on the map. Here's Salem Electric. Salem Electric's kind of like in Salem mostly. But people kind of, you can start your own power company if you want. It'll be hard to get into, but yeah, there are different companies that kind of, look over different regions.
Interesting. So the linemen, the power stuff originally comes from the companies, but then obviously you're not working for never really working for PGE or Pacific Power, right?
Yeah. So once the power comes into the building, that's where we take over. And whether it's a big building and there's a big switch gear, and from there it distributes into the building, or if it's just a house, it comes into your meter, and from that meter on, it goes into a panel, and then from the panel, it splits out through your house. So that's already kind of what I do.
Dang. Yeah. So you started out, I guess, going back to the beginning. You started out as that Sparky when your uncle called you up. How what did you do before that? Did you work before that or?
Yeah, I worked a couple of construction jobs. Again, Russian. You kind of have to.
I'm the exception. I haven't worked
really?
in any construction
Seriously?
jobs ever. Yeah.
Wow. See, that's the new generation, because everybody in my generation, everybody worked construction. Like you almost have to. It's a prerequisite. But I love it how the new generation of Slavics are getting office jobs and getting, marketing jobs and getting, doing other stuff other than construction. Because every time I see like a younger guy and he's like, and I ask him like, what do you want to do? He's like, oh, I think I want to do construction. And I'm like, come on, man. Like we have an excuse. Like I came here when I was 11 years old. So like I have an excuse for the fact that I didn't know how to, navigate around the college scene, and I didn't know how to get a scholarships. But like these younger Slavs, like you need to, go out there and start getting paid for your brain, rather than getting paid for your body and killing your body. So I'm actually, I'm glad to see that,
Yeah, because like everybody that had to do it, those folks that had to, I mean, it's typically because you can't speak English, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you just don't have the opportunity. But like if you're just going into construction just cause, but you're not saying that like an electrician job is not necessarily like something that you should avoid. You would
definitely not. I mean, we're at the top, of that pyramid in construction.
Right.
Like it's a well-paying job. But still, nevertheless, like we get paid for our bodies. Like we go out and we, sometimes it's pretty heavy physically. So, and we get paid to do something with our body, where if you can get education, if you can learn, if you can find a way where you can get paid for using your mind, that's where I feel like it's the next level. So that's what I kind of encourage people to do, to, get paid to use your head, get paid to use, what's between your ears, and get good at it. So
just know that there are options, right?
Yeah.
Because there's some people that still prefer, like they want to work with their hands and they like that and they like, but it's not the only way is what you're saying.
Which I'm a huge advocate for electrical trade, because I think it's a great trade. I mean, we get paid very well. Some people think we get paid too much, We get paid very well, and I think electrical trade it's a trade that evolves all the time. So like comparing it to framing, not knocking on framers out there, but once you learn framing, it's the same job over and over, just different location. Where electrical trade is constantly evolving. You see new equipment, you see new dimmers, you see new lights come in, solar is coming in. So it's an evolving trade. So like as an electrician, I've always been learning. Like you're always learning something new, you know? So that's why I'm a big advocate for it. It pays well. It takes care of my family. And it's a fun trade to be in because you don't get bored.
There's still brain involved. It's not just.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. So yeah, going back to how you got started, you said you worked some construction before.
Yeah, I did some stucco. Then I worked for a contractor who did some remodeling work. So just kind of construction background mostly. Before that, I remember my lowest point. I remember I wasn't working and I was like, I need to make some money. So I packed my mom's and dad's lawnmower in my trunk. It was just a sedan. You know, and I packed it in there. The handle's all hanging out, and I'm like, I'm gonna go mow some lawns. You know, I'm gonna go around my neighborhood and I'm gonna ask people if they want their lawns mowed, so I can earn some money. You know, and packed it in there. Drove for probably 2 hours. Not one job. No way. Not one person wanted their lawn mowed, and I remember just being so discouraged. I'm like, man, like business is hard. Like it's hard to go out there and like
get no's.
Like yeah. Sell, like you guys talk about selling a lot here, but it's hard to go out there and provide a service for somebody who, you know, is skeptical. Or
Did you try again after that first time?
Nope. That was the end of my lawn maintenance career.
This could have been a very different podcast if you just tried again, man. It would been a different story.
What would you say, like, is your income, get like not specifically you, but like the range in terms of when you're just an apprentice starting out first 4 years?
So right now apprentices start out at 19, almost $20 an hour in the union program. Non-union is a little bit less.
Yeah, my friend was making 16, I think.
Yeah.
Non-union.
Yeah. So that's where you start out, and every 6 months you get a raise pretty much. So it's a couple dollars an hour raise, and then you get that until you hit that cap, and then you're expected to take the journeyman test. Is
it pretty competitive getting into like a union gig like that?
Yeah, it's very competitive. So they actually had the program closed for a while because they had too many candidates, and
it's like once a year you can only apply, right? Is that how it works?
Different programs have different kind of rules. So it depends on what your region is. I think ours is like every 6 months you can apply.
Okay.
And then they do an interview to see, what you're made of. You take a written test, and then you're ranked on this list. And then there's a guy who's ranked number one, and there's a guy who's ranked, if there's 2,000 candidates, you're ranked 2,000,
Right.
And then let's say a contractor needs an apprentice, so they pick up guy number one. And then once the guy number one's hired by a contractor, then the guy number two becomes guy number one. So, and that list is usually pretty long. A lot of people have been applying to the trades, especially after COVID, especially after what's been happening. We've had a lot of applicants, and it's pretty competitive. So I always tell people, if you're applying for it, like, put your best foot forward, bring everything, all the certifications you have. If you've taken a forklift class, bring that in. If you don't have CPR card, go get a CPR card.
Anything.
Anything. Yeah. Any kind of college credits, like, because you want to stand out from the rest of the applicants. So, because it's pretty hard to get in right now.
So did you know when you were starting out that like this was going to be kind of it for the long haul, or was it kind of just, I need a job and this is like what's there, and you didn't really expect to work here this long?
Yeah. Actually, when I was just starting out, and when I was the apprentice, I still had my hoop dreams of making it in music.
Hey. There you go.
So I remember just working, and I'm like, well, I don't think I'll be here for a while. I think I want to be, a full-time musician. And I'm like, well, this is making me good money, so I'm gonna continue doing this, So in the beginning, it was more of like, I'm just here, to do this. Where right now, I see it as such a great tool, and I get to help so many people, and I truly enjoy it. So, but yeah, definitely in the beginning, I was just kind of like, yeah, this is a job, So
that makes sense. Was it how was it starting out? Was it pretty fast paced? Was it like a lot of stuff to learn in the beginning, or how did it feel?
Yeah, the biggest challenge was I grew up as like a goody boy church kid, and when you dive into a construction field, it's pretty raunchy and pretty raw, and I got on a big commercial job, and that's where it's like really, because people cussing, rock music is playing, everybody is, chewing, spitting tobacco, and it's just like, I was shocked. I was just like, where am I? I want to go home. I was blown away by like, because I grew up in church, I grew up, and never heard the F word dropped, and then you get tossed into this like, Shark Tank, and I'm just like, I don't want to do this, So that was the biggest like, and I worked like far from home. So I worked in Bend, which is like two hours. Ooh. So I had to like stay in a room full of, stinky construction guys. And, I didn't have my mom making me breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I was just like, I don't like this.
How old were you when you started?
I think I was 18, 19. Yeah.
So how many years did it take until you became one of those guys that were dropping F-bomb and
What's funny is that I tell people now is like, right now the construction field is like, I feel like I'm at home, like these are my people. Where before I was like, oh, I'm better than these guys. But now I'm like, yeah, I love that. I love that atmosphere just because I feel like, I can relate to those people. So yeah, it took some years. Yeah. But yeah.
What was the closest you got to like maybe getting fired or something like that?
Maybe getting fired.
I want to hear the wild story where you're just like, oops, I almost electrocuted a whole family.
Next question. No, I'm not going to incriminate myself like some others have done on this podcast.
It doesn't have to be anything legal where you're just like, yeah. Sorry, Uncle. I may have.
I keep thinking of examples of others, almost getting
fired. Let's pretend it was your friend. That
did what did other people do?
So the boss walks in, and my friend has his feet up on the transformer in the electrical room.
Nice.
No, that's awesome. So you started. It was kind of a culture shock for you to kind of figure things out. You started the apprentice program, and you said that was for how long?
4 years. Yeah.
4 years. So you did 4 years of school. It's how much school is actually involved? Is it like, I think I heard it's like on the weekends you have classes, or how does that work normally?
Yeah. It's different. Like right now, guys that there are apprentices that I work with, their school's completely different. Sometimes they take like a week off and they go to school for a week. Sometimes it's night classes. Sometimes it's every Wednesday. So different programs are different, set up differently. But for me, it was 2 nights a week, and it was 2-hour classes. And then, you just kind of sit through the professor lecturing on the code book, and it's the most boring thing in the world. And and it's a lot of math, a lot of like calculations, and everything is black and white. Where like in my other world of music, like when you're creative, you have so many different like things that you could do with sound, right? Where electrical work is like math, like it's either black or white. It's either right or wrong. So to me, it just didn't feel natural at first. I'm like, well, what about creativity? What about, maybe bending some rules? But it was like, no, it's either this or that,
Interesting.
So
is that why you're still doing music? To kind of have both worlds?
I guess, yeah. I guess that part.
Why you're still playing wedding gigs with Star Musica?
You could say that.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty impressive because like you being a musician, like having that brain, I feel like typically people can't have a job where it's both. You know what I mean? Where it's like it's black and white, but you also have music, or maybe it's a struggle. Like for me, I can't do that. Like for me, sales is easy because it's just like an extension of your like creativity.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I had to, like I was terrible. I got a D in math in college. Like not even. Yeah, I had to like drop out because like I just couldn't.
Yeah.
Right. And so the fact that you are actually able to excel and actually we'll get to like where you are now later, but like you actually stuck through it. Was that like a big challenge? Was that like one of the biggest challenges of becoming, having it be a career, was like the actual math, the black and white of it? Or was there other things that you just didn't expect that made it challenging?
Yeah.
Or you just really smart and I'm just dumb?
That's definitely not it.
Yeah.
I think part of it was survivalist mode, because I knew that, hey, if I don't pass this class, like what else is there for me? Am I going back to mowing, or attempting, not even mowing grass, but attempting to mow grass, And I think, part of it is just like, hey, this is it. If I don't make it, like,
back against the wall.
Your back is against the wall, and you kind of have to make it, And I think that again is going back to kind of the the generation of like people who just immigrated here, they kind of have more of that survivalist of like, well, this is it. I'm not gonna go search for something else. I'm not gonna go to these other job, interviews because I'm here
It's
and
like
I'm
if
gonna
it
make
ain't
this
broke,
work.
don't fix it kind of thing. Like just
Yeah.
I know how to do this thing, so why?
A stubborn
branch out?
Slavic, like my dad. He got here and he wanted to become a truck driver, but the CDL test is pretty difficult, right? And I think he took that test over 20 times until he passed it. And it's that stubborn Slavic, mentality of like, no, I'm gonna get it, because I have no other choice. I have to bring food on the table, so I'm gonna take it until I pass it,
Yeah.
So
My mom, she was learning English while also in nursing school. So you got to learn like what bones are called, and also be like, how do I say bones?
Yeah.
In English. You know what I mean? So that's like the older I get, the more and more I'm impressed with my mom too, because she had, how old were you? Maybe like in middle school. I was in elementary. My sister was like a toddler and also learning English and also going to nursing school. Like oh, she was pregnant with, oh yeah. So even crazier, right? So being pregnant, so it's that Slavic stubbornness. And that's what I'm afraid of. You touched on like the whole, like, oh, like you're glad. And I am
New
glad
generation.
too that like our generation is kind of going through like, using our brain, going to marketing, going to sales, and not, breaking our backs. But I'm a little afraid of like our generation, like where are we going to be at in 2 years or 2 generations, where all of a sudden we're going to have some sort of like victim mentality of like
softening, right? Like it's like when you're an immigrant, like you're just more motivated. Like, oh, you came from a different country, like you have to make it work. But when you grow up here, you're just like, you become complacent. For a lot of people, it is an interesting thought.
But at the same time, I see it as in you would go seek other opportunities where we are kind of stuck in where we are. Like you would go and be like, well, I don't like this. Let me go find something I do like, where we're like, well, here's my 2 options, mowing grass or being an electrician. And, mowing grass didn't work out. So here I am.
Well, but it's like, I feel like the immigrant parents, like your mom in that example, there was no choice but success. Like there was nothing else. Whereas when you're like, what do I love to do? A lot of times you just end up bouncing from place to place and not really taking things seriously because you're always just looking for what's easier, right? Isn't that a challenge?
Yeah, you could say that. I guess depending if you're an optimist or a pessimist, the way that you look at it, like there's definitely different ways of looking at are you going to make it work or not? Or, I have another option if I don't like where I'm at. So, depends on your perspective.
I mean, obviously it depends on the person. Obviously, I mean, look at Roman here. He's being super successful and he's not in construction. But there's other people that I just know personally that like, well, like I just, find something, right? But it is what it is.
Hey man, if my grandkids want to be baristas, I guess that's okay. But like, I'm not gonna be happy about it. Like, I'd be like, this is what Yuriy was talking about, the softening. That's hey, we got our podcast title, the softening.
I'll have to rethink that one. But no, anyway, so back to the apprenticeship program. So you were doing those classes. Did you ever try like traditional college or university or anything like that? Or
I actually got my bachelor's degree after I graduated. After I got my journeyman license, but that was for ministry. That's a different story.
That's a different story. But you never you never thought about traditional school for like your career kind of thing.
Yeah, or? I actually went through a firefighting program out of high school. I graduated early. I graduated as a junior because I had enough credits. And the counselor brought me in, sat me down, and she goes, well, what do you want to be? I'm like, no idea. And she's like, so take this test, and it's kind of like a personality test, and then you get results of what your potential career choice should be. And firefighting was on there, so I went through a 1.5 year firefighting school out of high school.
I remember that. I remember you. I used to think you were a firefighter for the longest time, just because I remember maybe seeing a picture or something like that of you in firefighter gear or something. I don't know. That was straight out of high school, right?
Yeah. So I graduated early and I went straight into that and did the 1.5 year program, and then found out, oh, nobody gets jobs once you graduate.
Oh, yeah,
it's like it's so
impossible.
I have you haven't heard this episode yet, but I had a firefighter on my show, and he took 7 years of like volunteering, doing EMT, ambulance, like going to like 20 different stations for interviews until he finally got a job. And it takes determination.
Yeah, it's so tough.
And it's not an easy job.
Yeah,
at
it's
all
not.
Afterwards.
It's not. That firefighting boot camp was so hard because they want to weed out everybody who not only physically but mentally can't take it. And then they put
it's like at that point just be a Marine or something.
I know, seriously.
It's like why are we in the ocean? We're firefighters. You're just getting drowned by like waves or something.
We actually had like police officers and soldiers come to the boot camp because it puts you through like hell physically, and it was kind of their way of training for But yeah,
you survived. I'm guessing.
Oh, what?
You survived.
You survived.
I survived. Yeah.
You did well. I mean, did you do well?
Yeah, I did really good in the physical part, and then
humble brag right there.
right. But once they get all the people who can't take it physically, then they put you through a mental like hell, and they put us in the room. And they told us before this exercise that like drink as much water as you can, and they kind of like hey, just you probably should drink as much water as you can. And then they put us in this room, and for 3 hours,
we hold your pee.
No, they.
I would fail. I'd never be a firefighter. I'd pee myself 30 minutes in.
No, they took a tank that you wear. It's called SCBA, and they took it apart, take every little bolt and screw out, and they put 3 of those in the room, and they turned off the lights, and they blindfolded us. And I don't know why they blindfolded us.
Bit redundant.
And they blasted rock music as loud as the speakers would take it. And they told us, you as a team have to put this SCBA back together, and you have to communicate with each other. And every time you would find like a little strap or a screw, and you're hollering to your team like, I got this. And what the upperclassmen would do is it would take you and they'd throw you across the room. And for 3 hours, you're going through like physical and mental like hell. Wow. I had cramps in my body where I didn't know I had muscles. Like,
wow.
And once you get cramps, they kind of drag you out. They throw you there. They let you recover. No water still. And then they're like, throw you back in. So for 3 hours, you're going through this like just mental punishment of like, I want to quit. Like I want to quit right now, and you can if you want to,
Yeah.
But first they put you through the physical stress, and then they see like, can you take it mentally? Can you pass this? When things are hard, are you going to quit? Are you going to fold? Or are you going to keep going? So
you did all that because the personality test told you you could be a
Thank you, counselor.
You're getting thrown around that room and you're just thinking that's some stupid test.
I remember when I took that test, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor. So what would a doctor say for this question? And like, oh, great. Yeah, it said I could be a doctor. This is perfect. Like, this is exactly what I'm going for. That's really how things tend to work is you just arbitrary decisions lead to you. How did you end up leaving that program?
Once I graduated and I realized I wasn't going to get a job, and I didn't want to go travel across the country.
So you actually like finished the
finished the firefighter program, and then
you think that helped you? Oh no, that wouldn't help. You already got the gig through Alex.
Oh yeah, so right after I finished that, I realized I'm not gonna be a firefighter. I worked some construction jobs, and then right after that, Alex contacted me. He's like, hey, do you want to become an electrician? So it kind of all worked out as a
That's cool.
All worked out at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the firefighter program. So you did your apprenticeship, you did the 4 years. How did things change after you finished that program? So you became a journeyman, right? After you finished that program.
Yeah. Then you pretty much get to choose where you want to work. So as an apprentice, you're kind of stuck with the company where you're at. When you turn out and when you're a journeyman, then you could be like, well, what kind of opportunities do I want?
Any company that's in the union, kind of.
Yeah. So I said I want to what's called run work. So it means like pretty much be the guy in charge of how a job goes. And the company where I was working, the company where Alex worked, there were so many good guys, and I knew I wasn't going to get that opportunity. So I actually took an opportunity to work for a different company just so I could be that guy. I could be that foreman. And they gave me plenty of that opportunity. It didn't turn out to be as glamorous as I thought because, it's a lot of pressure on you. To kind of know what's coming up. You have to know, certain information. You have to talk to the general contractors. You have to know, what you need to do. You have to, supply them with material. And every day you're kind of laying guys out where, they come to you, okay, I'm done with the project. What do you want me to do now? Well, shoot, what do I have for you?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of pressure to be that foreman, to be that,
So
the
you
guy in
can,
charge.
do you have to be a journeyman for a certain period of time to be a foreman, or is it?
No, you could be a foreman right when you turn out. It's just that opportunity. Do you want it? And if you want it, are you going to go and ask for it? And are you going to get it? So it's kind of one of those things where you have to put yourself in the right path to, to get that. So.
And is there like a certain ratio too with foreman, between foreman and journeyman? And all that good
So
stuff?
if you're a foreman, and then if you get more than 3 other foremen, then you become a general foreman. And then every foreman has to have a certain amount of journeymen and a certain amount of apprentices. It's pretty. I don't want to say political, but it's there's a structure to it that you have to follow. So
interesting. And you went that route. Why? Like, why did you decide to go that?
I wanted the challenge. I wanted to know how I would do it, because every time I'm on the job, I'm kind of observing the guy in charge, and I'm seeing how he's doing it, and that young mentality in you just goes, I could do better than him. I could do it better than him. He's not doing that good of a job. So I was like, I want the challenge of running a job. I want the challenge of doing my own gig, running my crew. So I went out. I left the company where I was to pursue that. So
you, as an apprentice, you were saying like $20 an hour, and then it goes up a couple dollars every 6 months. You become a journeyman. In your case, a foreman. What does that pay?
So at the time, I was working for a non-union company, and they paid less. So at that time, this was probably 10 years ago. I was making $26 an hour, which was way below the company where I was at. It was pretty low paying company, and they were shady in all kinds of ways. But
okay,
I was making $26 an hour at the time.
Generally speaking, at like average, probably 30. Would you say
average? Yeah, average around 30. Yeah,
and that's 10 years ago. So at the time, that's pretty good, right?
So right now, it probably went over $10. So right now, if you're running a job, you're probably making 38, 39. So
what is that in like a yearly income?
What's
80,
that? Yeah,
it's like 80K. Okay, so that's good pay.
And that's non-union. The union pays about $10 more.
Oh,
so right now you'd be getting about 48, 49.
That's if you're a foreman, you said.
If you're a journeyman, if you're a foreman, you get 5%, so you get right over 50. If you're a general foreman, that's another 5%. You're getting like 54, 55. So you're kind of bumping up. The more responsibility you take on, the more you're.
So the union determines the pay, or is this company different?
So if you're in the union, then every journeyman gets paid a certain amount, and every apprentice gets paid. So a contractor could choose, hey, Alex, you're really good, I'm going to pay you more, but you can't pay less than the union bargain scale. Yeah. Where in the non-union, they could pay you whatever they want, so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you started the foreman gig. It turned out to be more than you thought, kind of thing. What happened next?
So I actually left that company to go into the union, because I heard that union has good benefits, they pay more. So I actually left, went to the union, and then worked there for probably 5, 6, 7 years. And then that's where when my kind of desire to run a job started, that's where I kind of started to have a desire of like, maybe one day I can have my own business.
Ooh, foreshadowing a little bit here.
A little segue. But as I went into the union, that's where I was like, I think I really want to have my own business. So then as I was working, I started kind of preparing. So after you get your journeyman license to start your own business, so in the state of Oregon, you have to have a Master Electrician's license. And that to get that, you have to get your journeyman license. Then you have to work for 8,000 hours, so another 4 years. And then you sit down for this test. And this test is it has a 3% pass rate. So 3% of people that take it pass it. Like they write it in a way where you will fail it, So so as I was still working, I was counting down the minutes to where I have those 8,000 hours, because I'm like, once I get the 8,000 hours, I'm gonna go take this test. So I was waiting. You have to have it all documented. I was getting, my ducks in a row because I was like, I want this. I want to pass this test, and I want to start my own business. And I took the test. And before you take the test, you could take this prep course that prepares you for this test, and it's $1,000, and they prepare you for it. And I took the prep course, paid $1,000, took the test, failed it. Later found out that the guy who was teaching it, he was a smart guy. He was an engineer, but he interpreted code. Code
the
is like
engineer was teaching the prep course.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but he was teaching us the way that he understood the code.
But he never took the test himself.
Oh, he took it himself.
Okay,
He took it himself, passed it. But he was working as an engineer.
Interesting.
So he used to be in the field, and then he became an engineer. He got, he passed his test. So he was teaching others how to take it. But the way that he was teaching it was the way that he understood it. And our code is kind of like the Bible, where you can understand it so many different ways. They state something, but you're like, well, does it mean this or does it mean this? So he was teaching it.
Greek, it actually means this.
But you said before you were saying it was black and white. So there's more gray.
The rules are black and white. How you interpret the rules.
Interesting.
Something has to be accessible. Well, how do you define accessible?
Oh, okay.
Something is within sight. Something has to be within sight. So if I have my panel here, the disconnect has to be. Yeah.
Well,
If there's a bush in front of it, is it still within sight? If it's behind a corner, if there's a door in front, is it still within sight? So how you interpret within sight, which is one of the requirements, it could be a gray area. So.
So is it great? So does the grader kind of interpret and kind of?
So the guy who writes the test is the one who decides if your answer is right or wrong.
Odd.
Yeah. So that's partially why this test is so hard, is because there are so many different answers. There's so many different ways you can answer it. So, but I took the prep course, took the test, failed it. So
what do you know what your score was?
I failed it pretty bad. So there's two parts. One of the parts, I think I had like a 50%. And then the other part, I had somewhere in the 60s. And you need to get 75 on both. But yeah, I failed it bad. So then I figure out, and I hear, this guy's not the best. So I took another prep course. This was offered through the union. And I took that prep course.
Not $1,000.
It was $250,
Okay.
And the guy taught the class, but he was this like old timer, and he told more stories than he taught us. He was just like, oh yeah, back when I was in the field, I was this and that, and we did this and that, So it just pretty much wasted my time. But I took that prep course, took the test again, failed it again. And then finally, the guy who actually wrote the test.
How far apart did you take these tests?
About 6 months to a year between them.
Is there like a requirement you have to wait a certain?
You have to wait. You have to get your results, and then you have to wait a month.
Okay.
So and you get your results in about 2 weeks. So you could take it every month and a half.
Okay. But you waited 6 to 2.
Yeah, because I wanted to study. I had a study buddy, so we would just kind of sit down and take tests, practice tests, and we were working on getting our master licenses. So took it again, and then finally the guy who actually wrote the test, and he teaches a prep course. And when I was trying to take it, he wasn't offering it. So finally, like in a year or so, I'm like, "Ooh, this guy is offering the course." So I was like one of the first people to sign up, and I was there. Took the prep course, paid another $1,000. So at this point, and every time you take the test, it's $100. So I'm like $2,000, $3,000 into it almost, So I take another prep course, and after that guy, the way that he teaches it was just so much more simple, and he simplifies it, and he teaches you strategy. He's like, hey, tackle the hardest parts of the test first, and then the stuff that you're kind of unsure, just leave it towards the end, and then make your best guess. So he taught a strategy. So once I took his prep course, I passed the test
after the third try.
Yeah. So, and once I had my test, I had my license, and this license, obviously you have to go through so much to get it. That's when I started kind of making preparations and getting my ducks in a row, and I started.
You start your own thing.
Yeah. You passed the test. This is what, like 3 years ago?
This was 2 years ago.
So
November of 2020.
About 13 years into your electrician journey for doing the math.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. So is this test, like the Master Electrician license, is that used for anything else, or is that specifically for starting your own your business.
So technically, the Master Electrician license lets you engineer jobs too. Because if you own a business, sometimes you get a job where it's called as build. So you design it as you build it, where you as a customer would come in and be like, I don't know what I want. I didn't hire an engineer to, make prints and give the electrician, here's what we're doing. Here's a 200 panel. Here's a disconnect. Here's a transformer. So me as the business owner, I'm supposed to design a job for you, and I'm supposed to provide you with a quality product. So me as a master electrician, I'm also an engineer, electrical engineer, technically, because I'm designing, electrical systems. So that's why the test is so hard, is because they're like, hey, these guys, they're going to be designing electrical systems. And if they don't know what they're doing, they can burn something down, So they make this test so hard. They want you to know that code book like inside and out. So, and it kind of makes sense. But at that time, I was just so pissed at them. I'm like, why do you have to make this so hard? Why does it have to be?
So you come into like, let's say like a commercial building that just got built, and you just got hired by, the team that built it, and you basically just like look, you have to inspect it, and you're like, okay, I have an idea.
Yeah.
And then what do you do from there? Or do you work with people to kind of engineer all that stuff?
Most of the time. So sometimes you get an engineer job where you have set of prints and you just go off the prints.
Right.
And those are easy, right? But if you don't have that, so some people are like, oh, we're going to save some money and we're going to do it as an as-built job. And so they rely on you to give them a good product. So most of the time, my conversations with them start before the ground even breaks. Because I ask them, okay, what are your needs? What are you going to have in here?
What's your budget?
Yeah. Well, more of like, what kind of equipment are you going to have in here? If it's like a storage place, it's easy. You just need some lights and a couple of outlets, and that's it. But if it's like a distillery or a brewery or a restaurant, or right now we're doing this job in Brooks where the guy has this laser, cutting thing where he cuts metal with a laser, So I have to look at the equipment, and I have to see the voltage, the amperage, and then okay, that's one piece of equipment. And then he has a welder, and then he has this machine, and then I have to design how much of power, how much electricity, how big of a service I give them. And then PGE would take that and they would fact check me, make sure I didn't screw anything up.
Interesting.
And then they run that much power to the building. So that's why they want you to know this stuff, because like if I undersize it, then those conductors are going to heat up and it's going to burn the place down,
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So you got your license and you started making preparations. What does that look like? What kind of preparations did you have to make before you went in for business for yourself?
Yeah, so I'm not like a risky guy. I like to kind of be prepared. So as I was working for another contractor, I bought a van. I started buying tools. I got a website. I got the logo design. I got everything ready. For like on my first day when I went into business for myself, I had everything that I would ever need and probably even more. Just because I was like, I want to be ready.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah. And I didn't want to get into debt. I didn't want to, take out a huge loan and start in debt. I didn't want to start in a negative. So I just was buying stuff slowly. I would go on auctions and look for tools, So some companies would like auction off all their tools. So I'd be on the auction, finding tools, just be looking for stuff, and then my garage was just full of tools, and we didn't have any space to store anything in our garage because it was just full. But I pretty much started getting everything ready before I started. So that was probably 6 months of just like me, just, slowly acquiring all this stuff.
So you started the company and you were working and you were in the green basically off rip.
Day one.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Like I've been noticing that you always read like, or on Instagram, the business like pages or whatever. They're just like, debt is good, and like you gotta like, go into debt if you want to make real money and stuff like that. And I've come across like a ton of companies. I follow some folks like on social where like that's not the case. A lot of people start their company with their own money and they don't take on investors. And they can still have a successful business, like big businesses.
Yeah.
I think especially Slavic people. Like, Slavic people aren't used to debt. Like, they're safe. Like, it's you came from nothing, so you want to save it, right? Like, I think that's more common with us, and I think that's something that is just unusual, I think, in general in the States.
Yeah, there's like a level of like uncomfortability, like taking on an investor or like taking on debt. It just feels a little bit like I could do this. I'd rather not, skyrocket into profits. I'd rather take the harder route and just grind this out, but it'll be mine.
Yeah.
And I'll be in the green and it'll be slower. But like you obviously just judging on your journey, like you exercise patience through everything, like through the tests, through the apprenticeship, like that really probably trained you have to take everything slow. You have to do everything by the book. You have to really like invest in yourself before the next step. You feel like that just, you always had something like that? Or was it more like you had to learn that skill and see that as a valuable asset as you were kind of going through your career?
Yeah. What's funny is that after I started my business, I made some mistakes that were not indicative of what I did before I started it. So when I started my business, I gave myself a challenge. I said, in 7 years, I'm going to compete with the big boys in town. So there's like several big contractors in Salem. I said, in 7 years, I want to compete with them. And I started growing like super fast. I hired, I think within 6 months, we quadrupled in price.
When did you actually start the business?
So January of 2021. And then like within 6 months, I had 4 guys working for me. I had 2 vans now. I wasn't driving in the vans anymore. I wasn't doing the physical work. I was just driving my truck around and just looking at jobs and doing the paperwork. It grew super fast. People were like impressed. They were like, whoa, I didn't even know that you could do that, But then what I started feeling is that once you get to a certain size, it's hard to be as profitable. And especially if you don't have the right kind of people in your business, which if you grow slow, you find a guy who's pretty good. You hold on to him, you train him up. If he's young, you get him through the apprenticeship. Then you finally maybe find a journeyman, but you kind of you hire slow. You take time to grow. And then he's good. Then you move on to the next step where I was like, all right, I'm gonna be in 7 years. If I'm gonna compete with these big boys, I need to scale,
Right.
And I scaled too fast. And then I started seeing my profit margins go down because some people are, miscommunication, or some people are not performing up to certain levels. So all these things can go wrong the bigger you are. And if you don't have the infrastructure built, you can lose profitability, And I didn't have any infrastructure. I didn't have a shop. I didn't have capital saved up. I didn't have all these things. I said, I want to grow,
Yeah.
So my point is that you can grow too fast. And I experienced that in my business where I said, my only vision, my only goal is to grow. And there was a couple of months where I was like, am I going to make payroll? Because some certain people can drain you. Like if you are a bad worker in the company, a big company can take it. A big company has other 99 who are rock stars because they found them. But if you're a size of 5, if you have one bad apple, you could take a company down. And that's kind of what I had. I had just one guy who was kind of, underperforming. So I had to scale back, and it took humility to be like, all right, I think I grew too fast. I think I overreached. I think I kind of took too much on, put too much on my plate. And I was like, okay, I need to take a step back. And I had to let 2 guys go. And that was tough conversations. I hated doing it. Everybody wants to be a boss until you need to.
After how long?
So
I guess to backtrack. So from day one up until you hired the first person, how long did that take?
So it was about for 7 months that I kind of operated over where I should have been. So for 7 months, I was kind of, hoping that things will get better, hoping that, it will eventually turn out. But finally, so there was like a year and a couple of months into the business where I was like, okay, we need to make some decisions, let's take a step back. Let's regroup. I got back in the van, so back on, working physically. And it was like, it took humility because, when I was driving around in my truck, it was impressive. Oh, you don't work with your tools anymore. You've only been in business for a year and you're already, at this level.
Right.
And then I was like, nope, I'm back with my tools. I'm back working, because, you can grow too fast. So that's what I learned on my own skin.
The business needed that. So I'm curious. I want to hear about those conversations. You know what I mean?
Which conversation?
The 2 conversations of letting 2 people go. What was that like? You knew right off rip like who those 2 people were gonna be. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
Small team, so you know who those guys are. As a business owner, how do you prepare for that conversation, and does it ever go how you expect? And what were they like?
Yeah. I knew I needed to let a guy go, and I had a conversation with him, and I just said, listen, I can't afford to keep you on anymore. Nothing personal, but I just can't afford to keep you on anymore. I hope he doesn't listen to the podcast. Can we edit this one out? No, just kidding. But because I let a journeyman go, to stay in a ratio, I had to let an apprentice go as well. And that guy I didn't want to let go because he was my first employee, and I love the guy, and I put everything into him. But the problem was the second apprentice that I hired, he was just a 1 in a million rock star, just killing it. I mean, he would work, and then he'd go home and he'd watch YouTube videos on how to do that thing better the next day.
Wow.
And he was always asking questions, just a rock star, just one of the guys that you find, and you're like, I will keep this guy employed until he retires. Like I will give him whatever he needs, and sometimes you get these like home runs as an employer, like, okay, this guy's good, So I had choice between the two apprentices. I'm like, this guy's good, but this guy's better. So I had to let the guy that was good, he was my first employee, I had to let him go. And that conversation was pretty tough because I liked him, and he was a good employee, and he was great, and going through that, it was a tough conversation.
See, like the story that you like just shared, okay, this is how I would handle it because I'm a people pleaser. So like, this is why I was curious, like, how do you handle that conversation? Because I would probably make a promise that I wouldn't be able to keep to that guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. I would say something like, look, man, we're just in a tough spot. I'll probably bring you back. Just give me a little bit of time. And then like, I would leave the meeting and be like, why did I say that? You know what I mean? Like, but you just kept it very short. It sounds like it was a short convo, like, hey man, we can't afford to have you. Thank you very much. There's the door. Or was it a little bit more like, did you make any?
Yeah. What's funny is that I told him that I'm going to bring you back.
There you go.
But I did bring him back.
Oh, you brought him back?
I brought him back.
You see, we're people pleasers, man. So you brought him back, huh?
Yeah. So when you in the union, if you let an apprentice go, you have a choice of to recall him in 3 months. So it give you an option.
But you kind of knew that you probably would be in a position to bring him back anyway. So it wasn't like a.
I wanted to get back on my feet. I wanted to kind of build some capital back up, and I wanted to eventually bring him back because like he was my guy.
Yeah.
He started his first day as an electrician was with me, so I taught him everything he knows.
Exactly.
But I knew that I wanted to bring him back, so that's exactly what I told him. Like, listen, you're in a tough spot. I'm letting a journeyman go.
So that's all it counts. You followed through.
Yeah. No, I followed through, and it felt good.
Yeah.
It felt good to like finally have him back. So he's back on the team now. But that conversation, I was not looking forward to, man. It was
on his toes. I'd be like, but if you slip up again, I can't promise I can recall you another time. Have you read the?
I'll be so paranoid.
Electrician Bible.
Were you ready to deal with like that kind of stuff when you went into business for yourself? Like, were you ready to deal with employees and like lead people and stuff like that? I mean, obviously you were a foreman, but
yeah,
business owner's different.
It's different because this is your house on the line, and there's a lot more fire. There's a lot more stress. Like if you lose a job as a foreman, yeah, you might lose your job with that company, but you're not going to lose your house.
Right.
You're not going to put your family out on the street. Where this was like, this is it, like, so there's a lot more pressure. But I feel like the approach, the biggest approach I feel like as a business owner you could do to benefit you as a leader is to have a servant leader mentality.
Yep.
Where it's not, hey, I'm here and you guys are going to serve me, but you as a leader saying, hey, you guys are professionals. How can I serve you? What do you need for you guys to do your job better? And that's what I ask my guys almost every day. Do you need anything? And they see that, they appreciate it. And when things like that happen where I'm like, hey, I got to let you go. He knows that I have his best intentions in mind. And he knows that, like I did my best. But I think if you approach business in that way where me as a boss saying, I want to create an atmosphere where you can thrive and enjoy what you do. And if you don't like what you do, let me know. We can put you somewhere else, Right. But I want you to come to work and enjoy what you do for work, And I preach that. I tell my guys that, but I also follow through with it. If they tell me that they need something, there's a note in my phone of things that I need to do, things, certifications they want, or tools that they want, or, you know, if you don't follow through, if you just talk the talk, they'll catch on. But being a servant leader is huge, because your guys see it and they will go out and they'll bust it for you, because they know that they're equipped. They know that there's no more excuses, because now they have all the tools that they need, you know, but they feel it. They feel it that you're for them, you're on their side, and you know, and they're motivated to bust it for you. So like, I'll run through the wall for them, and I think over the years build a relationship where they'll run through the wall for me. Like, I've asked them for things that I'm like, I know, but this is the gig, you know, and they do it. So I think that's the biggest thing as far as being a leader in the business world. Like, what kind of leader are you? Because you could be the type of leader where I'm here, serve me, you know, but if you show up to, you know, to work, to your business, and say, I'm here to serve you, it makes a huge change in that just dynamic of your company.
How were you able to come to that conclusion? Was that through just like working under different managers and bosses?
To this podcast.
I was gonna say, did you have that mentality from day one of starting your business, or like?
I started listening to a lot of books, a lot of business books, and I think this bit I got from Dave Ramsey's EntreLeadership book, which is excellent business book. I'd recommend it to everybody. But yeah, he talks about the fact that, you know, you could be either a slave driver, or you could be a servant leader, and your business will show. You know, if you come to work and you ask them, how can I help you do your job better? It's hard not to be profitable, because your people will go out.
More fulfilling, I feel like. If you just sit behind a desk and you just kind of just make calls the whole time, like that I don't even think that that's a fun position to be in. Maybe, yeah, you'll like make good money and you can kind of, you know, more relaxed, but I feel like that's less fulfilling, where you just kind of call the shots and that's it. That's the extent of your job. I don't see a lot of fulfillment in that. Do you feel like what you do outside of work also kind of helped in that mentality, or?
Yeah, just being a leader of the church and knowing that, hey, when you're a leader of the church, you're working with volunteers, and you don't get a lot of say, you know, and how they perform. So you, as a leader in the church, your job is to equip and inspire people, and say, like, what do you feel called to do, you know?
Yeah.
And if you feel called to do something, how can I help you get there? So I think that definitely helped me, you know, kind of take that approach better, just kind of being in church since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And do you think, like, when you stopped just being on the truck and started being in the van and working with them, like day to day, that help with that too?
Yeah, because now you're rubbing shoulders with them. Now you're in there. Now you're doing what they're doing, and yeah, there's definitely more of a camaraderie, you know, rather than I show up, look at things, and leave, you know. So
no, boss is here, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, it's more. So, would you say, like, the biggest challenge in getting started and kind of getting to the point you are today was to kind of like find out where that ambition meets like reality, and like kind of be more sustainable in your growth?
Yeah, that's definitely there. Finding your pocket where you need to be. But I feel like the hardest thing about starting a business, I mean, it's hard to start anything. Like, it's hard to start a band. It's hard to start a podcast. It's hard to start anything, because at first you start something and nobody knows you're there, right? Like, nobody knows about you.
I mean, you got to 5 people in 6 months, so obviously someone knew about you pretty quick.
I always use the analogy of a plane taking off. So a plane uses more jet fuel taking off than, you know, once you're in the atmosphere, and once, you know, the gravity's not pulling you down, you could coast. So in the business, it's the same thing, or, you know, a podcast or a band. The hardest years are the first 2 years, where you're kind of fighting against the gravity. It's pulling you down because nobody knows you. You don't have a network. You don't have infrastructure. You don't have tools. You don't have good guys. You don't have customers. Nobody knows about you. So, but once you break through the atmosphere, once you are up there, then all of a sudden you have momentum going for you. You know, you have clientele that knows you and trusts you and recommends you to everybody. You have good guys who you've taken the time to vet them and kind of make sure that they're solid. You have, you know, you learn your trade obviously better, but yeah, the first 2 years are so tough because you're fighting against everything. You're fighting against that gravity.
That's my question though. How did you get there so quickly? How did the first 6 months like grow so fast?
Yeah. Networking was huge for me. I realized that networking was gonna put food on my table. So I would do my jobs, and then I just started kind of asking the question, how can I let people know that I'm here? So I joined like Chamber of Commerce. I joined the Home Builders Association. I joined some smaller networking groups, and pretty much any opportunity I had to be in front of people, I took them. And it sometimes it felt icky because I know that my guys are working somewhere, sweating, and I'm sitting having coffee with, business leaders around my area.
Whining and dining.
Yeah. But I knew that, hey, if I don't do this, then they won't have anything to do tomorrow, So I invested heavily into networking, and I did everything I could. And it's great because you get to meet like local business. I got so much work out of just, going to Chamber of Commerce meetings, or, you put on these trade shows where there's a bunch of contractors and you have your own table, and you go there and you kind of shake hands and give out your cards, and it kind of feels icky, because you're selling yourself. I hate selling myself, but I was out there saying, hey, listen, we're the best out there. And if you give us one chance, we'll show you that you will never hire another electrician again. And I did my pitch, and I told people, and eventually it caught up. I had this one meeting. I didn't want to be there that day, but I sat down at this chamber meeting and sat next to this guy who was like, not even like, I wasn't impressed with him. He wasn't impressed with me. We didn't really hit it off to like anything special, but we exchanged cards. And then he calls me later that day, and he goes, yeah, I got this client to do some low voltage work. Do you guys do low voltage work? I'm like, low voltage work usually doesn't pay that much, and it's kind of tedious. So I'm like, yeah, we do low voltage work because we do, and he's like, well, here's the contact info. Can you follow up with her? And I followed up with her, scheduled a meeting, met her at the job site, looked at the job, and then she kind of looks at me. She's like, never heard of you guys before. I'm like, yeah, we're new in town, only a year into it, but, she's like, meet with me and my boss tomorrow. So I meet with her and her boss the next day at their office. It turns out they're a huge property management company.
Oh, wow.
And they do like millions of dollars worth of work every year. And she fired her current electrician and hired me on the spot.
Wow.
So now they're keeping us busy. And like in the long term, it was like making like a multi-million-dollar sale, just because I sat down and had coffee on Friday morning and passed out my card. Wow. It's like networking works, but it's networking for a reason. You got to work it.
Oh, that was good.
It's not net sitting. It's not net, drinking or eating. You got to work it. You got to show up. You got to start conversations,
It is gross. It is gross. Have you went to any, what are they called? Like events or anything like that?
Oh, like trade shows and stuff?
Like trade shows for Zoom Info?
No, I've not.
I've went to one. It was the most, felt gross.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When you're selling yourself, it's like, when you're selling a product, you can be like, something like, you get a complaint, you're like, oh yeah, like, sorry, we're working. When it's like your own thing, you take it personally.
Yeah. But the thing is that everyone knows why you're there, and they're acting like you're there for another reason. You're like all acting like you're sitting around a table, and you're like, oh yeah, oh the weather, wow, it's crazy. But you know that you're there for one specific reason, and it feels dirty. It really does. Yeah. Like I remember when I was at the trade show, I would come up to people, and like I would have this anxiety coming up to everyone because I'm like, they know I'm a liar. Like you feel like a liar, And I'd come up to people and I'd be like, hey, wow, what's that? They're like, oh, well, let me tell you. And I'm the 45,000th person that he's told this about, and he knows I don't care because he's starting his pitch. And I'm already looking at my cards to give to him. I'm like, yeah. Anyways, 1 second. Yeah. No, wow, that's great. Anyways, hey, here's my card. He's like, I didn't even finish, but yeah, thanks. I'm like, can I have yours? He's like, sure, I guess. And then I would take that. So that is true. You got to get through that. I don't. Does it get easier? I know that you had one recently.
Yeah.
That does it kind of get easier where you kind of know? Because I'm curious about that. This is where our worlds kind of collide in terms of like your pitch.
Yeah.
So did it kind of evolve eventually from like your first time you started networking to what it is now?
Yeah.
That's a good question. That's a solid question.
Very good question.
I'm glad you think so, Roman.
I would say it does get easier just talking to people, like just relating to people. But I feel like the biggest shift that I had that helped me is because the agenda that you talk about. Like you come up to somebody and they have agenda, and they know that you probably have an agenda, and it's vice versa. And kind of getting away from that sleazy salesman and just looking how you can help people. Like that mentality of like, yes, I might, sign a contract with you that'll make millions of dollars, but that's not what I want to think about. I want to think about how can I help you? How can I provide a service for you? But not just a transaction, but no, how can I help your life?
Yeah.
And I don't know if electrical is just I'm sure it's not the only trade where you could do that, but it's asking the question you can have the right morals while you're, selling. Because you're asking yourself the question, how can I enrich your life? How can I, help you get to a place where you want to be? I think mentality is you have to get past the sleaziness of it, and you just kind of have to, in your heart, like genuinely say, how can I and what we offer help you and what you're doing?
Our CEO just shared, I don't know if you saw that email with like the 15 habits or the 15 things that keep people from being successful. And one of them was keeping money on the front end of your mind. Like when you stop thinking about that and start, like you said, it seems like cheesy or like you're in sales, so obviously you're thinking about the money, but like sure, but like in the back, like the first thought is, can I help you? How can I help you? So that's really cool to hear that it kind of worked out for you.
It's a mentality shift, and I don't think it happens overnight. You have to kind of, and for you to stop thinking about the money, you obviously have to get to a place where you can stop thinking about the money. And it's hard to do that in the first, in the beginning. But yeah, like even when you network after our gigs, like that, hey, this gig, if we land this would be great, But when you kind of get past that and you start asking them like, well, where's your gig? Where's your wedding? And is it outside or inside? Well, what kind of style are you looking for? And what would be the perfect music? How loud is it? And you start thinking about you enriching their lives and you serving them, you can maybe slowly kind of get away from that. Hey, you need to hire me.
Right. Yeah. I remember that conversation that we had after our last gig, and you now I understand where you're coming from when you were telling me kind of like, hey, you need to network, because I feel the same way. Like I feel gross selling us. Like I hope that what we do sells it for us, like that's why I'm not huge into like the posting Instagram posts every day, even though, we got to step that up. But like, that's definitely something that as a business owner, you don't even think about of like, oh, you're going to have to get out there and you're going to have to kind of be vulnerable. You're going to have that conversation. You're going to have to learn how to, even if you are literally in the red, your company's going out of business, you can't look desperate. Yeah. And you have to kind of put on that poker face and you'd be like, oh yeah, I guess we could maybe help you. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe I'm going to lose my house tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah. You do have to have that swagger. Yeah. Because somebody sent me an Instagram video of contractors in their first year. Oh, the price is too high? Yeah, we'll bring that down. Yep. They made a mess. Oh, I'll come over there right now and clean it. And then contractors year 5, it's like, what? The price too high? Well, sorry, go find somebody else. And they just kind of keep going. So it's comedy, but there's truth to it. When you have a little bit of swagger in your sales, and when you don't seem desperate, you do sell yourself better because people are like, oh, well, maybe he doesn't need me. Yeah. Well, maybe I need him, Mm-hmm. So you do have to carry with yourself a level of swagger when you sell, because when you're desperate, people will
it definitely correlates to our world. I mean, we both had literally the same month where we both had 0 that we brought in revenue. And when you're there, when you're in a hole, to get out of that hole, but not sound desperate, it's terrible. It was the hardest thing I've ever tried to do. I mean, I kind of did it. I don't think I ever completed it because obviously we changed roles after that. But like, like not being attached to the outcome, like not being attached to that one person because they will see that. But having that swagger is so hard. And especially like you said, when you're starting a business, when you're starting from scratch, no one knows you, and how are they going to know you? if you don't put yourself out there.
Yeah.
It's not like us where we have a product that marketing can just push out a campaign and some people will come to us even if we don't try and, you know, we just close a deal like that. No, like you are marketing, you are everything. So you have to like, I can't, it's a tough journey, man, but somehow you did it.
Yeah.
Somehow you did it. So where is it today? You said, I'm trying to get the timeline straight. About a year and a month in is when you had to let those folks go. But you brought them back. When did that happen?
Yeah, I brought one of them back about 2 months ago. So now I'm back in the field. So now, you know, I work with one of the apprentices and my other journeyman works with the other. So, it's been great. It's been great to take a step back and to, you know, again, be profitable and to know that I'm in the right place right now. I'm in this pocket. Yes, eventually I'll move into a truck again. But right now, I'm where I need to be, and it took some stress, you know, to realize that. But yeah, I'm kind of in the place right now where I'm setting up my infrastructure now. So, like for example, finally got a space for a shop, right? So I was working out of a storage unit, and I rented the storage unit, and all our excess material and all our tools and everything would just throw in there, you know, and then you can't walk through it, you know. It doesn't work. You need a place where you can, you know, store your material. So I rented out a shop where I have a bunch of storage, too much storage right now, but I'll grow into it. I have a little office in there where that's been a game changer, because before, if I need to sit down and do some estimates and write some invoices, I'd go to like a coffee shop or, you know, Sherry's, and I'm sitting there and like, hey, do you need anything? No, I'm good. 5 minutes later, hey, is everything all right? Yeah, I'm good. I know you need me to get out of here, but just let me finish my estimates, you know, where I could just go into my office and I could work for 6 hours, just bust them all out. Nobody's bugging me, you know. So kind of having that infrastructure. And I could tell with my guys too, like they'll walk in there and they'll kind of hang out for a while, and they kind of enjoy the fact that they have a home now, where they could be like, okay, I need this, I'll grab that off the shelf, I'll throw my garbage into the dumpster, where before they would just drop the garbage onto my front lawn, you know, because there's no dumpster anywhere, there's no home, you know. So infrastructure is important, and right now I'm at a stage where I'm building that infrastructure. I'm getting ready to grow, and I know that when I hire my next guy, we're gonna need him. I'm not just gonna want him, you know. So kind of getting that set up, and it feels good to be in that pocket. It feels good to feel like I'm where I need to be. So yeah, that's where we're right now.
So was that what, like when you took that step back, when you had to let those guys go, is like, is that what it was like focusing more and building more of that infrastructure, and kind of like what you did before where you were super prepared and you had everything in place? Like, is that kind of what you're doing now instead of just the rapid growth?
Yeah. So I'm at a point where I really like where I am at right now. And I want the next step to be obvious, you know, whether it's a guy coming on board and saying like, hey, I'm interested in working for you, and me interviewing him intensively and making sure that he's the right fit and making sure that it's the right timing, having capital built up again, you know, having that safety net, because businesses, it's crazy, man. Some weeks you're like, woo, like we're doing well. What island am I buying? You know, and then next week you're like, am I gonna
the roller coaster? Yeah.
Are my guys' checks gonna bounce? So you have to save up this, you know, just capital of just, hey, through those low times, it's got to get me through it, and then through the high times, I'm gonna save, and I'm gonna kind of put it that way, because it's not like a regular job where you get paid every week and you can depend on that. Because some weeks I would get, you know, 5, 6, 7 customers, you know, high paying customers paying, and then nothing for a month, nothing, not a penny, you know, and you're kind of making phone calls. Hey, did you receive my invoice? Oh yeah, we'll get that paid. And then nothing for another month, you know. So it's high and low. It's a roller coaster of just like customers paying whenever they want. It's funny, I was talking to my wife. It's like you go to a grocery store and you buy groceries and you're expected to pay right there in the spot. But when you're a contractor, you do a job, right? And you have to pay your guys. But the customers kind of choose when they're going to pay the invoice, you know, and it's kind of a different, well, and it's even worse with like contractors. If you're a contractor hiring a subcontractor, those guys can, like, I've had invoices out for like over 3 months, you know, oh, you'll get paid when we get paid. Well, why aren't you paid? Well, we're not done with another thing. Okay. You know, so it's kind of funny how construction works sometimes, where it's, you don't see something for a long time. You don't see your invoices getting paid for a long time. So
It's interesting. I had someone on that was in the logistics space, and they said that like that's super common there too. But what they have is like a middleman that they basically hire that takes a percentage, like 1 or 2, like a small percentage of the invoice. But basically, what they do is they pay the company right away, and then they're the ones chasing the invoice and chasing the customer. Nothing like that exists for you guys?
I went to a trade show in Orlando not too long ago, and there was a service that was offered like that. I thought the fees were a little bit high, where I'm like, I'd rather get 100% of my money than 85 or
that's
90.
Yeah.
So, but I did have to take somebody to collections. One customer, like I feel like in a year and a half, almost 2 years, one customer is good. Like it's a good ratio. But I had to take sometimes you get an ugly client where you have to go that route. It's not fun.
That's pretty much burning the bridge there, right?
Oh yeah. That's probably a bad Google review. That's probably but
there's a lot to consider, right? You got to consider the guys. You got to consider if in terms of budgeting, are you as a business owner just like learning like as you go, just making mistakes, or are you kind of doing a hybrid of that, like making mistakes, but maybe kind of like listening to audiobooks on the side? Like you mentioned one book that you liked by Dave Ramsey. Any other books that you would recommend to help?
There are a couple of books that stood out for me. One of them is called Starfish and the Spider, and it was a book about how you set up an organization. And the guy was using an example of starfish. They had a problem with too many starfish in the Caribbean, so what they did is divers would go and they cut the starfish in pieces.
Starfish?
Starfish.
A fish that looks
Most
like
guys
a
use
star?
that.
Oh, a star. Oh, okay. I was like imagining a fish that had like stars on it. I'm just like, what?
This is why you're here, Roman, for those kind of questions.
I'm asking the hard-hitting questions here. Okay? What's a starfish? Hey, Jamie, look that up. What's a starfish look like? Oh, where's our TV?
Pull it up, Jamie.
Okay, starfish and the what?
Starfish and the spider. And
what's a spider?
What's a spider?
It's a spider.
But anyway, he was saying that they had problems with too many starfish in the ecosystem. So divers would go, they cut up the starfish. What they didn't know is when you cut a starfish, it grows into 2 starfish.
No.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then even if you cut a leg off, that leg can grow into another starfish. So they were actually being like counterproductive. They try to get less starfish in the ecosystem, but they're actually multiplying them. So he used the example of a starfish and a spider, because if you cut a spider, then it's dead, right? So he's like, how do you want to set up your organization?
I was afraid. I'm like, wait, is the spider going to multiply too? Like,
I know. No wonder I got so much spiders in the house. I've been cutting them in half.
Never cutting
Maybe
spider
stomp
again.
on them next time. I'm still fascinated by the starfish fact. I'm just like, hold on. Do they
you
really?
just learned what a starfish is, so I'm sure it's fascinating too.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get through this example. This book is never getting sold because of this podcast.
No, okay, so.
But anyway, you could build your organization like a spider, where if you kill one person or if you take one person out of the equation, the organization is dead. Or you could build your organization like a starfish, where if you cut one leg off, that leg can turn into an organization because that leg is so well equipped and it knows, So it's like, how do you build your business? Do you build your business like a spider, where you are telling everybody what to do? Or do you tell guys, hey, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of this. If I'm gone, the business is still going, still making you money. So that was like a mentality, like how do you set up a business? That was a really good book.
It's called Starfish and the Spider?
Yeah.
Okay.
Were you reading this stuff and looking into this stuff like before you actually started?
As soon as I became a foreman and kind of that spark kind of started, I just started listening to every book that I could get my hands on business, and just kind of like preparing myself. So I love Audible. So I'm always listening to something, you know.
Not
It
sponsored.
happens to be our
Not
sponsor. It's
Yet.
audible.com/starfish.
We haven't reached
Come
out
check
to
it out.
Audible to network yet, so maybe this will be the.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so there's that one. Any other books that you would
The other
recommend?
one that I would highly recommend for any entrepreneurs is E-Myth. It's by
E-Myth?
Patrick. Yeah, so E-Myth. So this guy, I don't remember his name, but he's a startup guru, and he wrote this book where he's saying that you don't need to just work in your business, you need to work on your business. So, and he says that a lot of us start businesses because, let's say, you do mechanical work, and you do mechanical work for your boss, and then you're like, hey, listen, if I cut out my boss, I could continue doing what I'm doing and make a lot more money. So your mentality is like, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, but make more money. But he's saying that it's not going to be enough because while you're working in the business, there's no marketing happening. There's no research. There's no development. There's no training. There's no growth. Not like all
There's
those
no one
pieces.
calling to chase down invoices.
Yeah. So he's saying you don't need to work in your business. You also need to work on your business. Like eventually you need to step out of those mechanic shoes and get into the office and start growing your business, go network and go, you know, search for a bigger shop and go, you know, find other guys to hire. So like that was a life-changing like idea for me too. Like, yes, if I just continue working in the field with my tools on, my business is not going to grow. I need to grow my business. I need to work on my business. And there's a lot more gold in there. This was just like a little tidbit. Super good book. Highly recommended for anybody who's a business owner or aspiring business owner. So.
Yeah. So you were always pretty entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I feel like I always had it in me. I feel like I always knew that I would have a business. I didn't know it was going to be electrical. When I just started in electrical, I didn't know it was going to be that. But I saw that it's a great opportunity. Like once you get to a point where you pass your master's electrician test and you start, the competition is so low because it takes, like with mechanical work or painting or something, like if somebody sees what you're doing and they cut you out and started their own business, like it's pretty easy. With my business, I always say there's no competition. Like I've had a couple of people come up to me and they're like, I want to start my own business. I'm like, I will sit down with you and I'll teach you everything you need to know. Like, because there's no competition. That's what my Uncle Alex did with me. When I started my own business, he gave me so much advice. And I'm literally could be his direct competitor, right? But he taught me so much. He's been my mentor because he's like, you know, here's everything you need. He didn't say everything you need to know, but he's taught me so much because, you know, it's a trade where we need more electricians. Right now, there's not enough electricians.
Raising tide. Wait, what's this saying? Raising tide.
Rising tide
raises all ships or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's a good mentality to have. So Roman asked this question earlier for when you're starting on electrical work, but since you started your own business, what kind of what's the craziest story that comes top of your mind, or like what's the most interesting thing, like customer or whatever situation that you've come across?
I think the one that the customer that I talked about that didn't pay, that was like the craziest thing to me because I feel like the job went like super well and we catered to them and we did everything that they asked.
So talk us through the job. Like what was?
Yeah, so it was pretty much a friend of a friend reached out, said, "Hey, my mother-in-law's house. She's been depressed because this house has just like been in ruins. They started a remodel like years ago, and it's still not done. So I want to step in and I want to help. So I'm trying to hire some people to come in and finish this remodel project." Mm-hmm. And we were super slammed at that time, but I was like, man, this sounds like, you know, something that I'd love to help with. And so I move them up in my schedule. We get in there, we do it. They added some more stuff, changed some stuff around, but you know, we just had grace towards them, and everything was fine. In the middle of that job, the guy and his wife get a divorce.
Ooh.
So now, when the time came to pay, he's like, "Hey, listen, didn't work out with me and her, but it's her mom's house, so deal with her." So I start talking to her, and she starts throwing stuff at me where, "Well, why is it this much? Well, why is it this much? Well, we told you that we have material that you should have used." I'm like, yes, we looked at the material. We couldn't use any of it. So just kind of back and forth. and it starts getting uglier, and eventually I had to, take her to collections, to get some of my money back because.
Can you tell us how much this job was for?
Yeah, it was almost $4,000. So it was like $3,800. And
how long did it take to finish? How much time
it took us probably a week or so to do it. Yeah, and that's like the roughen and the trim, so both parts of the job. And then one of the times she's like, well, show me a contract where it says that I need to pay you. And I'm going, you were referred by a friend. I trusted you that you guys would pay. I didn't sign a contract with you guys because I didn't feel like I needed to, but it just turned so ugly. And it's my only customer that I ever had to do that with. But I felt like I could back off and forget about these $3,800, right? But I felt like I need to have some pride in what we do,
right?
And get, paid for the work that we did. And I feel like if I would back down here, then
where's the line?
And who's to say that it's not going to happen again? And maybe it gets out, and maybe other people will try to do the same thing. Where I feel like this is my first one, I need to stand firm and say, you know what, we did the work, we did good work, and we deserve to get paid for it. But it was just an ugly process, man. It did not feel good any step of the way. Besides, us going in there and helping them out, and I gave her a huge discount too. Like from what I should have charged them. The job should have been around $5,000, and I gave them a huge discount, and still, I get this treatment. So
it's always the people you go out of your way to like to do that for that, like, I feel like treat you the worst. Like the customers that I like bend over backwards for the most always push your limits.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
That's rough.
There's another quick one too. So we're doing this job, this Petco in Kaiser Station. And there's this big conduit. There's a big pipe going from the panel back to the main distribution panel. And usually what you do is you rent this tugger. A tugger is pretty much, you guys know what a winch is?
No.
A winch? Starfish. Same thing. But you know what
a winch is like? You like cut it in half and it grows another winch,
exactly.
right? Okay, got it.
Yeah, so we're on the same page. A winch is in the front of your bumper, and it like rolls slowly.
Gotcha.
So it's like a winch, but it pulls a rope. So you pull a rope through the pipe, and the winch. Okay. This winch, you just wrap the rope around the winch, and it slowly pulls the wire back through. Mm-hmm. Well, this tugger, it costs like thousands of dollars. I don't have thousands of dollars to spend on this winch and this tugger. So I'm like, we're going to pull this by hand. And we use this pipe that we wrap the rope around and would all pull on it. And by the end, the straight piece of pipe was like this because there was so much force on it. We barely got it through. And like at the end, I have a picture somewhere I'll show you guys later where we were just like, all of us are dead. Because I was like, you know what? I'm not going to spend money on this thing. We're going to do it by hand. And at the end, I was like, I should have bought that thing. Just the amount of labor that we, the amount of hours that we use on this thing and just the trouble. And, I was like, okay, I learned my lesson. For the next one, I'm buying a tugger.
Did you learn your lesson on the other one that didn't pay? Like, are you just doing contracts for every job?
Yeah.
Moving forward, doesn't matter how
contract
small.
Is attached to my estimate and my, and if you sign this contract, that's when we schedule you. So it's a huge part. Yeah, that was a lesson, and I knew about it, but it just at that time I was like, well, this is a friend, And I didn't feel like I needed it because there was trust built, Did
you get anything from that collection?
Not yet. So they're still working on it. They're going through steps. First, they contact them. So this agency, it's funny, is this Russian guy. His name is Mike. And he approached me. I met him at a chamber meeting. And he's like, hey, we're a debt collections agency. I'm like, so do you walk around with bats and, bust kneecaps, or how do you do this? He's like, no, there's a process. First, we get in touch with him. We kind of give him a formal letter that looks official, and then slowly we get more and more, aggressive with it, and eventually it's collections and
then the bats.
And then the bats.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So we got a segment on this show. It's called Questions from the Audience.
Ooh.
So I wanted to run a couple questions, just two for you real quick as we wrap this up here. So first question is, do you think the way the Master's Electrician test was written was meant to force you to learn the code book or to teach you how to think in your field?
You didn't emphasize that how enough. That was kind
of... Yeah.
Repeat the last part. Learn the code book or
or how to think in your field?
That's a great question, David. I feel like I did both because first of all, I got to know my code book so well that I knew where to go. Like right now, if I have a calculation that I need to do, boom, I already know I have everything tabbed. So my code book is like my Bible. I know it so well because I've taken 3 tests with it and like hundreds of hours of prep. But that second part is I've never thought about until now is, it teaches you to solve problems, where you're stuck, where you don't know the answer, like where do you go, So definitely, I think even deeper than that, it kind of built toughness mentally where you're like, I'm going to get this, or die trying. So it's definitely toughness that you need in the field.
Gotcha. And the other question is, how has your thought process changed, or how is it different from when you started as a journeyman to now?
Yeah. So having a business is definitely by far the hardest thing I've ever done. And mostly it's because it's 100 things flying at you constantly, constant phone calls, constant, we need this, why isn't this done? We need that. How about this? How about that? While you're working with your tools in your AirPods, you're solving problems in 3 other places. So I feel like my thought process changed in the way that I am now not only being reactive to things flying at me, but I'm also being proactive on how do I avoid this problem next time. So, and it's a constant just fire hydrant of things. And I get like people texting me or calling me on Sunday nights. I get people texting me or calling me when I'm on vacation. And people,
when you're at a wedding gig,
sometimes 4 times when you're at a wedding gig. But it's a constant flow of of things that you need to solve or things that you need to answer. So I feel like just out of the gig, what it is I think differently now because not only am I reactive to the fires that I need to put out, but I'm also proactive as in, okay, how do we build a system for this? Because when you're starting out, there's no systems for anything. You're just like, just get it done. But a good business will have a good system. Hey, this is how we approach A, B, and C. For the next time, here's what you do. Here's the PO number that you give, and you find it here. So you build systems that help you operate easier. So just a lot more thrown at you. When you're just a electrician, you are just faced with one task. Like that's all you're doing. Okay, here's a gig. Here's the job. You need to run the conduits from here to here, and put a junction box here, and then feed this equipment. Like that's all you think about.
You wear one hat instead of 5.
Yeah, and you could put your AirPods in, and you could just work. You could just listen to an audiobook. Where right now, I have like 4 or 5 credits right now on audiobook on Audible, not a sponsor, because it's like right now it's like mentally I am just like to the max, not just physically but mentally because so many things are coming, and I feel like that's the biggest difficulty with running a business is so many expectations are there that you need to meet,
Right.
And even your relationships change. Like people who treated you as a person before, they now treat you as a service. What you have to offer, and the way people relate to you changes. So it's a shift in how you even like relate to your friends sometimes. So
Interesting. Have you read The Power of Habit?
No, I've heard of it, but never read it. Is it good?
Yeah, it talks a lot about systems and like how huge businesses were transformed just because of someone coming in and making small changes in the process, and in just like you were talking about and some of those things.
It's constantly like offered to me.
I actually listened to it on Audible a couple times. Yeah.
What is it called?
Power of Habit.
Oh.
I think I might have a copy. I can give it to you.
Like physical copy?
Oh, you don't do physical?
No.
You can't do that while you're working.
It's called ADHD.
Well, you can't do that when you're working on stuff. It makes sense.
I learned the best by listening.
Interesting.
Like if I listen to a book, I will get more out of it than if I sit down with it.
I'll be honest, and this is completely unrelated, but like I feel like the more I'm on TikTok, the more I'm convinced I have ADHD. Because I keep having all these things and like I relate to it more. For example, like there's this thing called bionic reading. Have you heard of it?
Is that where you fast read?
No. So it's basically it's like an app I think that you can download, and it helps with folks like do you guys have this issue where you're reading and then your eyes just trail off to like the third, fourth, fifth line, right?
Yeah.
So apparently bionic reading, like it bolds, you know how you can like control and like make a word bold or not. It boldens the first like 2 words or 2 letters in the word on every single word, and it just keeps you like, because all you really need is the first like 3 like letters of the word, and you kind of just fill it in. So apparently bionic reading like helps with your reading. It just keeps you on track. And like,
how many free sponsorships are we gonna give on here, bro?
No, bionic reading is like a thing. It's not an actual app.
Have you ever heard about Koja?
Yeah. No.
Sorry,
we'll plug your company. Trust me, we will. I promise. But like that or like anything else, like the more I'm on TikTok, the more I'm like, I think I do have ADHD.
It's a byproduct, bro. It's a byproduct of TikTok's culture.
Or it's like, or you just like, the fact I'm on TikTok right now is probably means I have ADHD. But I want you to have a chance. Oh, we have one more fan question here. What's your password?
Is that the question?
That's a question.
What's your password? Yeah. I think the question is
60180.
how important. Okay, I remember the question, and this is gonna be. Can we wrap it up on this question?
I mean, I had a question too, but if you want
to
go
ahead, we'll wrap it on my question.
Sheesh.
All right, go.
Who's the host here?
Yeah, come on, Roman.
Yeah, he'll plug.
Yeah, we'll give all that a chance. No, I think just my big question. Well, I have a couple, but apparently Roman wants to wrap it up already.
Go for it. He's a busy man.
Did you hear
I'm
about
sorry.
my wife, the guys? I gotta go.
I got all night. That's all I care about.
There needs to be context because we're actually recording now. No. It's all good. Keep going.
No context needed. No. So how has you said when you first started out, you were like, let's be one of the big players in 7 years. How's that changed? Or has it changed?
Yeah. Oh, my mentality about it?
Yeah.
I think just humility and knowing that, hey, those guys, the big players, there's a reason why they are the big players, and the reason why they still stay the big players is because anything that's good will take time to grow. You know, it will take patience. So I'm not saying I'm backing away from my goal. I want to be there, you know, but what I've learned is just to have patience and humility with it, you know, like, yeah, if I don't reach that goal, it's not going to kill me. It's a goal that I set for myself, but I would choose not meeting that goal over going bankrupt and, you know, losing everything I have. So just, having patience, because anything worth doing, you know, anything doing is worth, or doing is worth doing right. I don't know. Yeah, anything worth doing is worth doing right.
Yeah, but there we go. Starfish.
Profound statement.
Can't laugh at me, Roman.
Profound statement. Anything worth doing is worth doing, guys. You know that?
No, it's like
you heard it here first.
It's like Gary Vee always talks about his like end goal is buying the New York Jets, but if he never does it, he does. It's about the process of doing it and about the process of pursuing that. And it seems like that's kind of more where you're, because
that process is so beautiful. Like, I always have to remind myself that, you know how they say the first $1 million is the most fun to make, because after that it's like it doesn't have the same like desperation, the same excitement. You know, I have to constantly remind myself to enjoy this process, because, you know, pretty soon I'm not gonna have the feeling of, oh, am I gonna make payroll? And this is exciting, maybe not in a good way, but, you know, this is exciting, this stage in my business, in my journey. So like, just enjoy it, you know. So
that's awesome. What would you say, like, I guess if you had to go back to starting out or even before, when you were kind of preparing yourself for starting out, what would you do differently, or what would you tell yourself in that like stage of like before you're starting a business, like to help you get more aligned and get to here sooner?
Yeah. I would say surround yourself with people who have done it, or people who are successful, and listen to their advice, because I've had advice to me given, you know, are you sure you should be growing this fast? Like, I've sat down with my friends and they've questioned me on that. And I was like, I'm fine. I got it. You know,
and these are people that actually have Like,
yeah. These are business owners and mentors, and good friends who, kind of questioned, the speed that I was growing with, and I was like, I got it, But like listening to advice is huge, man. Like if you have people in your life that you trust and they want the best for you, you have to have those two things. You have to trust them, and you have to know they want the best for you. Listen to their advice. That's huge because I could have avoided so many heartaches. I could have avoided so much stress. I wouldn't have as many gray hairs. But just listening to advice is huge. Taking people's just voice and actually giving it a thought and not just brushing it aside. Where no, I'm better than that. I'm smarter than that.
Arrogance.
Yeah. So I guess going back to just humility, just like listen to good advice from people that want well for you.
Yeah, I think that last part is key. From people that want well for you, not from people that are jealous or haven't done it right. Like that's what's important, is to see the fruit of the people that you're listening to.
Yeah. Everybody has an opinion about you, but you have to pick and choose. Like, okay, has this person done it? Does he have any cred? And does he want the best for me? Or is there any jealousy, or is there any agenda that he has? So
the rule of 10, or not the rule of 10. It's like you're never as good as they say you are. You're never as bad as they say you are.
Yeah.
You're somewhere in the middle.
So where's the 10?
The 10 is another one I was thinking, where it's like 3 people agree, 3 people disagree, and 4 people don't have an opinion.
And it's going back to Gary Vee. I'm fanboying here on Gary Vee, but like
not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. But he always like says, like, in his entrepreneurial journey, like he always lives in the middle. Like he doesn't let his lows be super low. He doesn't let his highs be super high. And that's how you keep going even when you're getting hate. That's also how you keep yourself level-headed when you're blowing up, like he has been in the last few years. And I, obviously I'm nowhere near that, but like it's just something that keeping in the back of my mind too.
Yeah, and buy NFTs. That's the other thing he says.
Buy NFTs.
Yeah.
Not sponsored.
Well, you should plug your business.
I feel like.
Yeah, I want to leave that after.
Oh, afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. What's
So
where can they find you, man? I think let's do that camera.
Actually, no.
Is that one on?
This one is the best probably for you.
All right, go for it.
Listen.
Blue chew.
Yeah, go ahead. Where can they find your business? Where can they contact you?
Yeah. If you go to mountaincoastelectric.com, you'll see all of our info. We have an Instagram page. We have a Facebook page that you can find both on our website. You can find our phone number on there. And there's also a website contact form if you just want to ask a question, or if you want to reach out to us. If you fill out that contact form on our website, we'll
residential and commercial, right?
So yeah, we do residential and commercial work in Salem and surrounding areas, which Portland is in that area. So we do quite a lot of work in Portland. Not licensed in Washington, unfortunately. So maybe one day, but just Oregon for now. So yeah, mountaincoastelectric.com.
Sweet.
If you want an electrician that cares for you and that wants the best for you, you go to mountaincoastelectric.com.
Thank you, Yuri. Thanks for having us on. Give him a round of applause.
Hey.
Killed it. Crushed it. All right. And post-credit scene here. What's final question here?
Am I quitting the band?
How important is Czar Muzika to you, and what are you willing to do to prove it?
Look at the time.
Awesome. That was good.
That was fun.
That was good. Killed it, man.